There have been various difficult situations. One that springs to mind that I think I look back on now as well and remember, it kind of gives me chills to even think about. But there were some very big obstacles and challenges that I had to overcome where we'd spent too much on marketing. We hadn't measured our cash flow correctly. We had too much that we owed in VAT and to suppliers that, we'd made great sales, but we hadn't managed our finances correctly. And as someone who hadn't run a business before, I've got no accountancy training formally. I had to figure this stuff out a lot of the time through trial and error, because I think when you're doing it alone, you don't know what you don't know. So I can't go and say, hey, what should I look out for in terms of VAT cash flow management if I've never encountered an issue with VAT cash flow management? And so now, obviously with our program, I know that that's something that I would have wanted to know about on day one. So I set people up and can show them how to do that. And we make sure that people don't hit the same obstacles and pitfalls that I did along the way. But yeah, at the time, there were some really rough patches where, there was a lot of nerves and stress and anxiety. And are we going to make it? Because my whole family's future was depending on me succeeding with this. And the way I viewed it, my identity was so tied into this that if I had to go back with my tail between my legs and just admit defeat and say, can I have my job back? I failed. There would have been so many people who would have, been almost secretly happy to see that, I think, and be like, yeah, you see, that's why people don't quit their jobs and take that kind of a risk. And I didn't want that to happen. I was so adamant that no, I'm not going to let this wreck me. And luckily it didn't. And I pulled through, but very nearly didn't. There were times where I thought we're going to have to go back. That I can't control the level of debt we're in right now. And we got there in the end and we got through it. And now I can lay foundations for other people who are starting out to never be in that same position that I wouldn't wish on anybody.
Some brilliant lessons that you learned sort of at an early step sort of stage there. I'm sure they still sort of teach you now to this day, some of those lessons you learned from the very early days and feeling that stress and that worry from being in those situations. So how did you handle those unexpected or difficult situations? What would you say were the things that you used and leveraged to really help you to get out of those difficult situations?
Yeah, there have been various difficult situations. One that springs to mind that I think I look back on now as well and remember, it kind of gives me chills to even think about. But I had 2 virtual assistants working for me, running my stores. And it was kind of in that time where the financial revelations came to light that actually we were in a difficult situation. We were potentially at risk of going under and having to declare bankruptcy or go into administration or whatever you do with a business that is in that position. And I remember waking up and I was in Bali. So we were seemingly in paradise, like everyone would dream of being in Bali running their business. And I remember waking up one morning and both of my virtual assistants never logged in that day. And I was like, okay, are they late? Are they stuck in traffic? What's going on? So I checked, we have a Slack channel for our, a messenger channel for our team. I logged in an hour later, it's still not there, and the customer issues are building up and there's orders building up. And there were all kinds of other, issues that you need to deal with as a business owner building up. And I'm starting to think I need somebody here to deal with this stuff. I've got too much else on my plate trying to stop this ship going down. And they never logged in. And I didn't hear from them again until nearly a year later. I'd hired a husband and wife team. I hired the husband first, and then I hired the wife, his wife. And I don't know what happened exactly to this day, but they just left me stranded in my worst point in my business ever, probably at the most stressed I've ever been in my life, and just watching my savings just dwindle from 10 years of having worked in the corporate world to try and build up a future for my family. I'm just throwing money into this business to try to resolve it. And it was really scary. And I think it was the point where I just thought, I can't take anymore. I'm going to snap. And finding out that I owed a supplier more than we had, it was just a very stressful time. And, that was the first time I ever really experienced sleep loss and insomnia and just lying awake staring at a ceiling fan in Bali, just thinking, how am I going to get ourselves out of this mess whilst we're in paradise? And that was almost the worst thing, where everyone was looking at us being like, you guys are living the dream. And I'm thinking, at that point, I think I was like, I wish I was just back in a 9-to-5 job where I had a cushy salary, a nice company car, and nothing to worry about than a mortgage that was easily covered by my monthly salary. But how I did that eventually and how I did handle that stress and those types of issues was I realized I have to take ownership over them. As an entrepreneur, you don't have a fallback. You can't go to HR and escalate the issue and say, oh, my team left me on a day. Can I raise a complaint about that? Like, they're gone. If you wait for somebody else to come in and fix the show, you're going out of business. So you have to figure it. And I think now I thrive on that, because I'm like, the buck stops with me as the business owner. And I quite like that, because I'm like, well, then I have to take it seriously. So now I take ownership over things like building a culture, building a team of people who I know are not going to let me down, putting in place contracts, having long-term incentives for team members so that they don't just leave us like that, because they'd be forfeiting the incentives that they get of building up and working with us as a team. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the strategies I took. But the other strategy is I tried to surround myself with positive people, positive affirmations in the morning, going out, keeping fit, exercising. That was critical for my own mental well-being, and still is to this day. Like, I have to always go out and do some form of exercise, or have a sauna, or do something that like gets your heart beating and the endorphins flowing. But building a community like we have now at Dropship Unlocked of like-minded individuals and entrepreneurs, I mean, back then for me the equivalent of that was just a small group of friends that I'd built, one in Australia, one in I think Canada, one in the US, or a couple in the US, and being around them was great. But as I said, they weren't in our market. They didn't understand the nuances of business in the UK. And so I wish that something like Dropship Unlocked had existed back then, because it would have been my go-to place to go and get the help that I needed.